Hello there everyone. In today's tutorial I'm going to show you how you can make your own kilt pin. So they can look like this. So I've got two versions here. I've got one where I made some loops on it. You can use that to add and attach things to it. But then I've also got one here without. So you can really make it however you want to depending on the project that you need it for. Because you can add decoration to here and it'll be quite a nice piece of jewellery by itself. So if you want to learn how to make this kilt pin, then keep watching. So all we're going to need for this is 1 gauge of regular round wire that I have here, and the one that I'm working with is a 1mm. So I'm using this because it needs to have a nice strength to it because it is a brooch pin that we're making. It needs to be able to hold its shape, but also this is still malleable enough that we can make the shape for the brooch pin that we want to. What I've then done is taken one length of my 1mm wire here of about 25 centimeters, and this is all we need to make the whole brooch pin here. What you then want to make sure to do with your length of wire as well is get it as nice and straight as possible so you don't have any kinks or bends in it, but also try and get it as straight as possible here because we have parts in the brooch pin itself that need where the wire here needs to be nice and straight. I'm then going to be working mainly with my 6-step bail making pliers here, so we just have these steps on there so I know exactly I get the right size of loop that I want. You can obviously use your round nose pliers, that's fine, but I'm just going to prefer to work with these. And then what we need to do is get our wire and then start towards one end here and then go a little bit up. So I'm going to place my bail making pliers. In this case I'm using my second smallest one. If you're using round nose pliers, just judge it as you go where to place your pliers onto your wire. And then I'm going to place it maybe about 5 centimeters to 7 centimeters or so up from the bottom of the wire there. I'm going to bend the wire back around it. So basically the two legs, the ends of wire, are going to be sticking up next to each other, side by side, with a little curve on the bottom there. I just want to then squeeze them together a little bit more. So there we go, that's the first step. And then we need to attach the top part together here as well. So what I'm going to do is, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers, you can use flat nose pliers as well, and we need to make a little bend in this. So I'm just going to place it on the short end there of my tail. I want to place my pliers on there and then take the short end and bend it upwards. Just like that, a nice angle in there, about 90 degrees if you can. Then I'm going to take my bail making pliers again, and this is just to help guide my wire along the way really. So I'm going to use the smallest one in this case, because I just want to get a curve in here so I can then continue wrapping it around. I'm going to place it like this because what we want is for this short end to wrap around the longer end next to it, and it's just easier if you get a bit of a curve in there first. I'm just going to keep hold of it with my pliers and then gently bend it around there. I'm always using the wrong side. Bend it around. Just so we get it started. It looks a little something like this. So you can see it's kind of wanting to hug around the long tail there. And then I'm just going to get my chain nose pliers, and then we need to maneuver this wire a little bit. So I want to close this loop up even more. So just gently press a bit, because we basically want this short end to wrap and tighten around the longer end. So just work with that bit at a time, get it to loop all the way around so the short tail here comes all the way out the other side. So basically make a full circle around, and then we can squeeze it nice and tight as well around there, so it's going to basically be nice and secure. So some a bit like this, and when you're happy with that, we then need to take our cutters. I'm working with these flush cutters in my case, and then we need to get rid of this little end of the tail that we have left. And where I want to cut it is, if you look on the bottom part where it's wrapping around, you want your end of the short tail to basically be wrapping all the way around and then butting up against itself on the other side there. So basically forming a complete full circle. So I'm going to cut it off so the end of my wire will end up there, because that way we also get rid of the end, it's kind of tugged away nicely then. So cut through your wire. You can get a nice grip. There we go. But obviously now it's sticking out a little bit. We have the end sticking out. So what you want to make sure to do is take your chain nose pliers again, and we need to squeeze this end completely around the short, or the long tail, sorry, that is wrapping around already. So we kind of get rid of it. We don't want it sticking out and catching or scratching on anything. We have a complete circle wrapping around there. Something a bit like this. So now we can see from the other side here, it looks like that. We have that curve on the bottom, and you can just maneuver this a little bit. If you want it a little bit tighter, you can do that. Just gently squeeze it a bit. So we have this piece now, and this is going to be the section where the needle bit of the brooch pin hooks into. So what we need to do with that is, again, I'm going to get my bail making pliers. You can use round nose pliers like I said. Choose which one I want to use. This one I want to use a bit of a larger loop. So I'm going to place my pliers onto there, about halfway like this. And then this end down here where we have the curve, we need to then push that around all the way to the other side. And you can always roll it a bit as well, like that. So it almost forms a bit of a hook shape there. And you can just keep working with this however you, until you're happy with how it looks. I'm going to roll it a little bit more, because then what we need to do as well is this kind of hooks inwards now. We need this to come back out so it can catch. So I'm going to take, you can either work with your round nose pliers or you can take your chain nose pliers and just grab the very end where we have the curve there. So that's pointing inwards, so grab right on there, and then we basically want to make this go back outwards again. So just a nice little twist of the wrist for it to come back out. You can see it looks a bit something like that. So a bit more like a hook shape is coming back around, but then just kicking back outwards a little bit, because then the pin is going to sit inside of that. We can always adjust it a bit more if we need to, but just for now it looks like that. And then we're coming to the top of the brooch pin here, and that's where you really want to decide what you want to do as well. You can either decide to keep that straight across, so just a plain brooch pin, so kind of like the one I've already done. You can see up here it's nice and straight, there's no loops or anything. So if you do that, if you want it straight like that, you want to just skip the step that I'm going to show you now. What you can also choose to do, which is what I'm going to show you, is put some loops in here, so you can actually use it to then maybe dangle things from, attach it to. So the way you want to do that is, this is then the top part of the brooch pin here. So again, I'm going to get my 6-step bail making pliers. Use your round nose pliers if that's what you have. And then along the top here we want these loops. So I'm going to use my smallest one because I don't want them to be too large. And then to start making loops, I want to place my pliers in so it kind of sits like this. So my pliers are set like this with this pointing downwards. And to then make my first loop, you just decide by eye where you want your loops really. I take my long tail all the way around my pliers here and back out to where it came from. So what we want is a full complete circle like that. Then we just want to make sure that when the wire's coming back out to the direction you took it from the first place, that it stays nice and straight. So you might just want to make sure to straighten it back out, as it probably will bend a bit as you're working with it. So you get a nice even loop like this. Make sure the loop is nice and tight. And then you want to move on if you want to make another loop. Put a bit of spacing in there. Make your next loop. And this is where I then really like using these pliers. They come in handy because you can make sure that every single loop I make now is going to be exactly the same size, because I'm using the same step on my pliers here. Whereas with round nose pliers, there can be a little bit more tendency that it's going to vary because obviously they're tapered. But you can mark them if you want to, your round nose pliers, to make sure you use the exact same spot. It's up to you. I just prefer to use these pliers when I can. So that's 2 loops, and I'm going to see about making 3 loops on this one. You just do this by eye, try and get them evenly spaced if you want to. Last loop, I'm just looping them around the same way, same direction with my wire every time here. And then you can just, before you go all the way around, just take it out, have a look at your spacing. If it's pretty even, I can see this one is a little bit further away. So instead of pulling the wire all the way around, I'm going to put my pliers back in and just roll it a little bit backwards towards the previous loop. And like that. So it comes a bit closer. And then when you're happy, just make sure this wire is going straight back out again the other way. And it's nice and straight. So something like that. And so make sure where these loops are coming from, the top line across here is still nice and straight, and then we just have the loop sticking out. If you need to adjust anything now, you can do that. Otherwise, what we need to do is then the little kind of spring section down here. So for that, I'm going to take my pliers, again 6-step bell making pliers, or you can use round nose pliers. And now I want the loop that I want to use to be on the opposite side of the loops that I just made. So place your pliers and then take your long tail around the back of that and pull it again all the way to get a full circle. So first it looks like this. So we have a full circle down here now. What we actually need to do is come back up again, so we need to do more than a full circle. More like a circle and a half really. All the way around. And make sure still when you finish that you just straighten out this tail of wire that you have left, because this is then the pin part. We want to make sure that's obviously nice and straight. So look at your piece, see if you're happy with it. You can do any adjustments throughout. So it's almost ready, as we can see. So there we go. Now this pin just needs to be shortened down. And you do this at this point because then you can see where it's going to hook into the little section down here. I want to cut it off just right around there. So my pin is going to end just after it hooks inside of there. Cut it down. And I like to cut it at a bit an angle with my flush cutters when I'm doing the brooch pins here, because it makes it a bit more like a needle and easier to go through whatever you're wearing it on. So it looks like that. I just want to push this a little bit because it's probably sticking more to one side than the other. So just push it a bit opposite so it ends up sitting in the middle with this section there where it's going to hook in. And then basically all that's left to do is start using it. You can now hook it in and then it's going to hook in nicely there. And that's where you can just do your final touch as well. This part down here, like I said, you can adjust that later on. If you now try it on, try and hook it in. If you feel it's not quite secure enough, it doesn't go in deep enough, take it back out. And then you can just flick this out just a little bit more if you feel you need to. And then try and hook it, and then it sits really nicely like that. So that's the final adjustment you can just do. And then you have these loops down here if you choose to make them, where you can then attach things. Or like I said, you can then obviously leave it plain if that's what you want. So however you want to do it and what you want to use it for, that's completely up to you. So just to show you as an example how you can embellish the one with the loops on, I've just done a simple one here where I've just attached wrap loops with gemstones onto lengths of chain. Then I've also just added a length of chain across to give it a little bit extra. But it's just an example of what you can do, and then use this in itself as it is, as decoration. So obviously you can make them like this with the loops and decoration, or just plain, whatever you need it for. So this is then how you can make your own kilt pin here, either with the loops or without, depending on what you want to use it for. So it's pretty simple once you know the construction. So I really hope you enjoyed this tutorial, and thank you very much for watching. Hello everyone. Today I want to show you how to make your own Wirework brooch pin. And this is what mine looks like. So you have your actual pin part down here that opens up just like a regular brooch pin, and then connecting into this hook up there, so it's going to stay securely. And then along the top here I've made these loops, just so that we can use this to attach to something. You need to have these loops to be able to attach, and also so this doesn't move around and is